we're not shaping next week or next month. We're shaping 2 to 3 to 4 generations of people ahead of us. So it's really important that we make good choices right now. Otherwise, the people that are essentially our descendants, the way that I like to phrase it is we need to be good ancestors for those people. We need to think about them and take care of them properly.
Welcome everyone to Yamhill County Truth Seeker, Conversations in the Spirit of Truth. Today I'm happy to welcome Dan Tucholsky, who is on the McMinnville Planning Commission as a volunteer. Dan, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here today.
I really want to dig into what looks like a lot of new land use plans and construction projects potentially coming to McMinnville in our future, but let's learn a little bit about you first. First, I just want to thank you for your willingness to serve your 4-year term. Just for clarity, when were you appointed by the City Council?
I was appointed in January of 2021.
21. So that means your term is coming potentially to an end, and we'll see where that goes. But
yeah, exactly. Yep.
I just want to thank you for your work, because I'll confess, I'm not a night guy. I wouldn't want to go out to a meeting at night. It's kind of not my style. So anybody who's willing to go do that on behalf of others, I'm just thankful. So what inspired you to get involved in city government?
Well, realistically, it's and I'm coming to you today as a private citizen. I'm a volunteer in all of my positions with the city, so I speak only on behalf of myself, not on behalf of the city at this point. But what caused me to be a volunteer was just I saw a need for people to get involved, and when people have questions, when people are curious about what's taking place, the best way to make certain that you are informed is just getting into the process and being a volunteer for these areas, being the planning commission or other positions within the city. That's when you really get to find out what's taking place, the challenges that people are facing, and realistically what I would call the truth, at least according to me. It's interesting to get in and find the actual challenges that people face, and the staffing challenges, the land use challenges, the other challenges of anything else. And it's really, until you get your hands dirty, you don't really know what's going on.
For sure. Well, speaking of getting your hands dirty, I know because we met once before and you mentioned your police work. So is that also volunteer?
Yeah, so I've been a sworn reserve police officer for the city of McMinnville since November of 2017. And yes, that is a volunteer position as well.
Wow.
And again, mostly done at night, Fridays and
Wow.
Saturday nights. Yep.
That's amazing. I just feel like doing the we're not worthy thing, but
no, it's it. I'm just a human like everybody else. It's that
right.
I care deeply for the city of McMinnville and the county that we live in. I think it's a great place. I want to maintain that, and the easiest way to make sure that that's maintained for your children and for perpetuity is just to get involved and be part of the solution, rather than just sit here and wonder what's going on or complain about what's going on. It's like if you don't vote, you don't really have a chance to complain. So I encourage people to vote, get involved with city, police work, get involved with anything that really is your passion. I was involved with the police in 2017. My family and I had some challenging experiences with some of the homeless people around town. And it wasn't for lack of empathy that I was involved at that point. It was because I knew the city was strapped for resources. And I also knew that the best way to change something, or at least be involved with something, is to get involved. And so that's the reason that I actually went through the process to become a sworn reserve police officer. And then afterward, like, I can do more and I have more to give. So it's like I can join the planning commission. So, little by little, if everybody does, 5 to 10% more, it helps out.
Well, that's awesome. So I'm going to dig a little bit into your police side more just because I'm very curious, and you're the first officer that I've been able to speak to about some questions. So in the past few years, for whatever reason, there's been an increase in anti-police protests in other parts of the country. I haven't really seen it in McMinnville area. and
Right.
societal changes. You
Yeah.
mentioned the homeless situation and all kinds of other things. Have you noticed locally an upswing in the amount or kinds of criminal concerns and peacekeeping needs in McMinnville, or is it kind of the same as when you got involved in 2017?
Yeah, I'd really say it's significantly unchanged, if that can be a phrase. We deal with the same challenges. There are people that are down on their luck. There are people that use substances to the point of abuse. There are people that are having challenging times. Domestic violence is always part of it as well. I'd say the one thing I did see is after Measure 110 passed, the uh, possession of what I would consider to be controlled substances is no longer criminalized, and so that has changed significantly. And then also during COVID, there was what I perceived to be an increase in domestic violence because I think that people were in the home more, people were frustrated. There was just a lack of people with the opportunity to get outside and do things as much as they wanted to. So there was a bit of that, but overall, I would say it's not really changed a lot. And thankfully, we do live in McMinnville. It's full of a lot of great people. I've experienced almost zero pushback from any anti-police anything. I've had maybe two negative interactions with people that just saw me on the street and didn't decided that they didn't like the uniform. It wasn't me. It's just the uniform. They didn't like what was going on. So they did uh, give some unkind gestures, if you would call it that, and they moved along from there because they were in their cars. So
Well,
uh, overall, the city of McMinnville has been very supportive, though.
that's really good to hear, and
Yeah,
I'm glad to hear it because I've had some experiences where I've really needed law enforcement, and they've always been amazing. So I appreciate it
yeah,
very much. A
yeah. I'm glad to
little
hear that.
side related is has the increase in national illegal immigration had any impact on McMinnville's law enforcement?
I would say no, not in
Okay,
my
good,
experience. Yeah.
good.
What I've found is that you'll have a number of what I would consider frequent flyers, and these are people with mental health issues. These are
Mm,
people with substance abuse issues, and so you'll find that those are the repeat offenders quite frequently. And I think it really breaks down to the point of the state of Oregon doesn't have a system that allows for the mental health uh, workers to properly take care of people with mental health issues. So I think a lot of it comes down to mental health or the lack thereof in the state of Oregon. And
mm,
because of that, I think what happens is that you'll find that the mental health workers are actually the people that are your law enforcement officers because they're contacting these people that are out on the streets because they have mental health issues and there's no place else for them to go. Thankfully, we do have our community outreach specialists now within the County of Yamhill. We used to have three of them. We now have 12 of them. I think that's a great thing because it gives those individuals that are highly trained the opportunity to go to these situations where someone could be experiencing a mental health crisis rather than sending in the police with, tasers and pistols. You don't need that. What you really need is someone that's trained in behavioral health. And so I think that's a great ad for the actual county.
super important. That's good. Good to hear. Are they paid or is that volunteer
They
or how
are
does that
paid.
work?
They are paid. Yeah,
Okay.
thankfully they're paid. Yes,
Is
I
that
don't think they're paid.
county?
I don't think they're paid enough, but
Ah,
yeah, yeah, that is a county position. Yes,
okay. Good for
but
them.
they do respond to the calls within the city of McMinnville when asked to do so.
Yep. I've met one of them personally with
Nice.
a situation that involved a family member. So
Okay. Yeah.
it's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the current happenings on the Planning Commission. Commission members are, let's quote here from the webpage, they are
Yeah.
to take action and make recommendations, so action recommendations to the City Council on a variety of current and long range land use matters.
Mhm.
Does that pretty much
Exactly.
cover it?
Yeah, it absolutely does. We get involved in all of that, and then we do make recommendations to the city council when necessary. The latest one that you'll find was the development at Hill Road and Baker Creek, right at the northwest point of town. That actually was a recommendation that we pushed up to the city
Okay.
council. Yeah.
Well, we're going to get into that here in a second. So,
All right.
from what I gathered as I looked into the story about that proposed area,
Mhm.
there's a lot involved. There's zoning, there are parks, infrastructure, water use, trails. and a whole bunch more. And for you, I just picture you and your fellow commission members having to, I don't know, you must have to wade through an awful lot of information to be able to make a reasonable recommendation. And from what I know of you so far, I have a feeling that you would dig pretty deeply. I think we're talking about the Fox Ridge development. Is that right? Is that what?
Yeah, that's the one that you're referencing right now. The one that I was
Okay.
referencing was at the
Okay.
northwest corner of
Yeah.
Hill and Baker Creek. But I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
All right. So besides Fox Ridge, which we'll talk more about here in a minute, are
Mhm.
there other big projects in the works?
Well, there was the 175 unit, I would call it affordable housing area on Cumulus down by the airport, which was
Oh,
just passed through. I think that was a great thing for people because it's another 175 homes for people. I think that's really great. And then we do have the commercial and mixed residential space, which is at the northwest corner of Baker Creek and Hill, which will contain, I think it's 30,000 square feet of commercial, and I think it was 72 units of homes as well. So there's a few large ones going through right now. And then in addition to that, the Fox Ridge is what you're talking about.
so the one that you just
Yeah.
mentioned, does that have a name too, or is it just an area?
Uh, that was a planned development. It doesn't really have a name, but everybody knows where it's at out there. It's by the Lennar homes, which are all the new homes on the northwest side of town.
Okay. And what stage are we in with that? Just investigation or shovel
That one was
ready?
actually pushed to the city council. City council has approved it, so it's now at the point where the developers can start making plans for the infrastructure and start creating that. So it's going to happen.
Awesome. So for the Fox Ridge plan, you
Mhm.
are rightfully so at the mercy and will of the current landowners, from what I understand. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just because you're brought into the urban growth boundary doesn't mean that you have to sell your land. At that point, you have the opportunity to sell your land, but it doesn't mean you need to.
Okay. Yeah, I picked that up in the News Register article about that, and I was thankful because I didn't know if there was some pressure for right of way. If the city says we need this, then uh, you would take, hopefully, would not take someone's land from that. That wouldn't go over
No,
too well around here.
no. And the way that those laws work is they're not saying that we shall come in and take your land. We're saying that it's coming into the urban growth boundary, and at some future point in the I don't even the next 40 to 60 years, if you so choose to sell this land, it will be part of that urban growth boundary, and it can be used as zoned at that point.
Wow.
But we have a significant amount of land on the southwest side of town, up by Redmond Hill as well. It's also been brought into the urban growth boundary. And until those landowners decide to sell, then there's nothing that's going to happen.
Wow, that's really interesting. So you can create an urban growth boundary, but it doesn't mean that urban growth is going to happen there until. So when
Right.
you mentioned the 40 to 60 years, that's some long term. You're really touching the future, aren't you?
Yeah, Heather Richards, who's the director of the planning department, is actually very good at reminding us we're not shaping next week or next month. We're shaping 2 to 3 to 4 generations of people
Mm,
ahead of us. So it's really important that we make good choices right now. Otherwise, the people that are essentially our ancestors, we're going
descendants,
to,
right? Yeah,
yeah, descendants.
yeah.
The way that I like to phrase it is we need to be good ancestors for those people. We need to think about them and take care
Amen.
of them properly.
Awesome. Well, how did Fox Ridge get started exactly? What was the process from its inception to where it is today?
Yeah, so there's a project advisory committee that was formed, and that committee, I think it has about 15 people on it. It also has a couple of liaisons from the planning commission. And so all of those people got together, and Heather Richards, once again, she's an amazing person, starts laying out this is the area that we're working with. These are the natural features, landscapes, hazards. There's some steep areas up there. There's some heavy foliage areas. There's areas that we want to keep the trees because they're nice and people enjoy those. We're also dealing with a water filled quarry, so that's a natural hazard or a natural enhancement depending on how you use it. So when Heather brings all of this together, and Tom Schauer as well, who's also one of the planners, they say this is the area. this is what you have the potential to do with this area. And then that project advisory committee at that point starts to say, this is where we think the high density residential goes, medium density, low density commercial. And then Heather and Tom actually make sure that it meets all the requirements as set forth by the state so that you have the correct mixture of different zoning. And what that does is it makes certain that it meets all the requirements for the state and the city of McMinnville.
Got it. So, in addition, does Heather work with consultants, paid consultants on any of that?
Absolutely. Yeah, she does.
Hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Well, good job, her, because that's the foundation
Yeah,
to be able to present you with whatever she can come up with and satisfy
right.
the conditions of the state and the county. So you
Yeah, she does a
mentioned
great job.
you or you kind of alluded to Fox Ridge PAC. That's not a political action committee. How are
No,
they involved with your commission?
it is a project. The acronym is PAC, like a political action committee, but it's not a political action committee. It's a project advisory committee. And so what that means is that they, as a team, get together. It's a diverse group of people that have been selected from around the city, and they all have unique interests and unique experiences. And those people get together, they start to disseminate what it is that we need and figure out how we're going to actually make this a viable area. So definitely not
Hmm.
a political action committee, though.
Right. No, that was kind of a
Yeah,
joke. I
yeah,
assumed they
yeah,
weren't, but
yeah,
and they're selected kind of like you were, but only for one specific
yep,
project. Okay.
yeah, exactly, absolutely.
How much power does the commission that you're on have over final decisions as compared to the city council or Heather Richards?
Well, Heather Richards uh, gives us all of the information with which we make decisions. So anything that's brought to the planning commission, say we have an upcoming short-term rental application. It's out on Baker Creek Road. We are the final say of that short-term rental application. With respect to those, we also changed the distance between short-term rentals from, I think it was 200 feet to 500 feet. Some people wanted it 600, 700, even more. Um, we do have a lot of land use. I hate to use the word power. We can influence significantly the outcome of much of the land use in the
Hmm.
city of McMinnville. However, if it's contested and let's use the Gwendolyn Hotel downtown. Some people call it the G word. It's the large hotel that was intended to be at Galloway and Third. The uh, citizens didn't like it, and so what they did was they raised enough money to appeal it. They did appeal that to the city council at that point. The city council actually reversed a decision that was made by the planning commission. Now it went down to the mayor actually making that singular choice because the city council at that time was deadlocked. So it was 50-50 at that point. But
Wow, that's
we have
intense.
enough power. We have enough power to influence things. But again, we're trying to execute the will of the people that we serve. And you got to get back to the service part of it. I serve Ward 2, and that's a pretty big area in the Northwest section. That's who I represent. And so I try to make certain that those individuals are properly represented, and I'm their servant. That's my job.
Awesome. Well, so now a money question. How do you
Sure.
exactly budget for big and small projects around the city? Is there a chunk that you get and then you have to decide what's going to be used, or is it more just theoretical and future planning?
Yeah, so we don't deal with the budget part of it. What we do is we deal with the opportunity. And so we provide opportunities. The budget point really comes at the time when the city council has X amount of dollars to fund something. And at that point, they will allocate funds for specific projects sometimes. Uh, a lot of it is, though, private investment as well. So we have a lot of
Hmm.
private investors that come to us and they say, hey, this is what I'd like to do with this area. And I'm funding this. And, will you give me permission to do what I'm asking? The same thing happened at Hill and Baker Creek just recently. The gentleman is privately funded. He's doing all of this on his own. He brought us a plan. It was a plan to development that had all of the commercial, had all of the residential. And he said, this is what I'd like to do. couple of variances because it didn't meet the original project intent in some areas, but we at that point then deliberate over those and make choices on whether or not that should be allowed.
I get the feeling that a lot of this doesn't happen at your monthly meeting. There must be some conversations amongst you in between times. It seems like you have to do it all at the meeting.
Yeah, we have to do it
Wow.
all at the meeting. Otherwise, it's considered, if it's a quasi judicial hearing, that at
Sure.
that point becomes legal, and anything
Mm.
that we would communicate outside of that meeting would be ex parte communication. We're actually not allowed to do that. So some of these meetings, most recently, we had one that ran from 6:30 at night until 11:30 at night. So they do become long meetings. They are very tiring sometimes, and there's a lot of debate. But it's all on the public record, which it legally has to be.
Perfect. You and I first met at the dollars and cents meeting that the city
We
of
did.
McMinnville put on, asking locals to give input on the $5 million that came available after the yes vote for the new fire district. And I noticed then that you had some pretty deep questions. I did too, but and actually a lot
Sure.
of others, but about that process. And I also noticed in a recent News Register article that I talked about earlier that you and City Councilor Chris Chenoweth are referred to um, for the types of questions you asked, sort of challenging things like the reasonableness of certain activities in certain locations. Why are you having this there? Or
Right.
questioning a plan for, let's say, uh, what if there's a conflict between this idea and the size of the section of land that you're expecting us to do this on? Do you typically, personally, find yourself asking deeper questions about things at the city level instead of just accepting proposals? Are you one of those diggers, or is that just the way all of you are? How do you describe
No,
yourself in there?
well, I wouldn't say I'm unique in any way, uh, but I would say that my profession is an engineer. That's what I do all day long. Uh, so I dig for information. I dig for data. I don't look for opinions. I don't look for emotion as much. I'm looking for what's really driving these decisions. And at that point, then I look at how are these decisions going to affect the people which I represent and work to. As an example of what you just brought up, there was at the intersection of Hill Road and Fox Ridge Road on the northwest side of McMinnville, which is Ward 2, there's a number of houses that are very low density. And the proposal from the Fox Ridge PAC was to place some high density residential directly adjacent to that area. So the newspaper did quote me as saying that I wanted to move high density from one point to the other. And partially that was to keep the high density away from these very low density single family residences. But the other portion was I know that there's going to be children in these homes that are being built in high density residential. They don't need to cross any more streets than necessary to get to school. And
Mm.
eventually there's going to be a school that's built on the north side of that property. There's a bunch of school district property there. So I'm thinking that at that point, it's best to keep the children closer to school so they don't have to cross a busy road because someday Fox Ridge will be busier than it is today. And why not try to get that out of this planning with, I consider that kind of a double win there. So,
That makes sense.
yeah. The other portion of it, which you referenced, was Councillor Chenoweth had brought up the lack of commercial in that area. And I do know that there's a lack of commercial area in our city. There's a lot of people that would like to open a business, or like to have a storefront business, but there's just not room to do it. The latest example I can use is we have a CrossFit uh, facility that is currently occupying the industrial land at Riverside and Marsh right now. And the reason they're doing that is because there is no other place for them in town to actually conduct their business. There's not enough commercial space. So
Mm.
I think commercial is really important because you need people to be able to open a business. The other reason I cited for commercial being important in that area, and I do believe that the commercial is currently inadequate out there. The reason is because traffic. Traffic's a
Mm.
big thing in McMinnville. People don't like traffic. That's part of the reason they live in McMinnville. And as traffic increases, that only drives people to a point where they're unhappy with the infrastructure for the transportation. If we can keep those people in an area where they can get those services that are being provided for whatever they may need, I don't exactly know what they're asking for. It may be milk and groceries. It may be a daycare. If we can keep them from driving to the east side of town or to the central part of town and allow them to conduct their business at the point at which they live or just maybe walk, I think that's a good thing because it reduces traffic. People are walking. You have a more diversified area where people are actually getting those services. I just don't see that as a bad thing.
Genius. Is there anything else that's happening on the commission that you want to draw attention to?
The planning department needs help. Heather Richards, Tom Schauer, those people are all very taxed in their positions right now. So I would say that that's one thing that the planning department really needs is a staffing level that is adequate.
So it sounds like you're talking about more people hired by the city to work in their department.
Yeah, I think they have the open positions. I do know that they have one open position. They just haven't been. They filled it, but it went vacant twice
Well,
since the time that I've been on the commission.
I'm going to just provide the link in the description below for how people can attend your commission meetings if they want to. They're live.
Sure.
People can, within a certain time limit, submit questions in advance, and they're only once a month. So yes, they might go to ODark 30 in the morning, it sounds like, but if people want to get involved, it sounds like a really great place to give input.
Yeah, and lately we've had enough topics so that we've had these meetings two times a month, every couple of weeks, and sometimes in between there, we're also meeting with the city council. So, in the effort to provide more transparency of what's really taking place and the decisions that are being made, I do have a Facebook page that I've been using, and I will post the agenda for the night, and then as the choices are made, I will post the results so that people don't have to watch a 4 to 5 hour video to figure out what really happened. They don't have to wait for the newspaper to come out, or they don't just have hearsay of, I think this happened. So I'm trying to provide that. Whether I agree with the decisions or not doesn't matter. What really matters is that the people are actually informed.
Wow, that's an awesome service. Thank you. McMinnville Planning Commissioner Dan Tucholsky, thank you so much for your volunteer service on the commission, and blessings on future endeavors. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, sir.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, of liberty and justice for all.
All right, buddy.